Have you always known that you're on a soul path? And have you wondered how to gain real insight into the steps along your own unique journey? Welcome everyone, I'm Sarah Main, and thank you for joining me on Damayanti, the show for your soul. I'm so glad to have you along. Damayanti means peace and calm. Damayanti sheds a light for your soul through the wisdom that shines in the universal language of Sanskrit. Damayanti is the show that speaks to your soul, connects with your soul, and enriches your soul. Join me now on Damayanti, the show for your soul, and be inspired and uplifted by the beautiful light of this profound, timeless wisdom. Welcome everyone. Welcome to Damayanti, the show for your soul, with me, Sarah Main. And today we're back for a part 2 Q&A, the world of spirit, with my special guest, Saad Khan. Welcome back, Saad.
Thank you.
Well, Saad brings such wonderful questions to the table, and we wanted to keep this going and pursue it a bit further. So let's get right into it. Saad, do you want to just give a quick thumbnail of you and where you're at with all of this?
Yeah, sure. For the first 20 years of my work life, I was a video producer and photographer. And for the past 10 years, I've been in marketing and business transformation. And I had addiction and mental health issues, and I found a spiritual solution. So, I'm here on the show today because, a lot of people approach me because they can see a transformation, and, they're really interested to know what changed me. And, the second they hear the word spiritual or mindfulness, they run, so there's a lot of resistance.
Right. What's just popped into my mind in relation to that. So thank you for laying that out, because that it's a beautiful story, and it's wonderful that people even ask and notice and want to know, and that's such a golden opportunity and a gift. One suggestion is get some butcher's paper or something, big sheets of butcher's paper, pin them up on the wall, or if you've got a big whiteboard, and do your own brainstorming with the question, along the lines of exactly what you've just presented to me, which is when someone asks you, because they recognize the transformation in you, how can I best serve that question and respond to keep the conversation going? Right? Just ask that, really frame it in whatever way, completely open-ended. Keep the question as short as you can so your mind can really focus on it. And then the art of brainstorming is it's a purely right brain activity. So no rationalizing, no thinking, just write down everything. That's proper brainstorming, because then you can go back and analyze later, but no analysis. And just see what actually is drawn out of you from that question and from that opportunity to, draw out of yourself what will be pulled out of you. It just popped into my mind to even get past any effort you're making to try and do the right thing by someone and sort of, in a sense, get this right, although I'm sure you're not thinking in those terms initially to get it right. But you want to keep the conversation going, and you want to help someone understand and give them something really good. But one way is to just throw the gates open in your mind and just see what comes out, because you may come up with something that is part of beyond, that's king. Once you stop trying to think about it and you're in that brainstorm, just completely open-minded thing, and you write down anything, no matter how crazy it is, you just keep writing, something may flash, and you write it down, you capture it, writing in a written form, and then all of a sudden you've got a thread. You think, that could work. And that could just be a starting point for how you're approaching it now. And in a few years' time, it could change, but at least you've sort of got past your current structure of thinking about it. I don't know. How's that?
Yeah, no, it's good. It's good. I'm not sure if you actually answered this question specifically, but does spirituality mean that you believe in God and religion?
No.
Okay, good.
It is, spirituality is about the world of spirit. That's why I called these Q&As the world of spirit. It's come to mean that because up until people became more broadly connected and aware of consciousness itself, awareness and consciousness as something more than just an intellectual concept. It was experiential and it was powerful and transformative, because that's essentially what you're talking about, right? Your consciousness and your awareness has expanded and raised. It's increased. These are just words and they're sort of unsatisfactory, really, but that's in broad terms what's happened, right? But up until then, people just, the only relationship they really had was with formal religion. That's how it was. And particularly in the 1960s and the 70s, all of that started getting broken apart. For good or ill, that's not the topic, that's not really the consideration. But the only option being formal religion, whatever path, whatever type you were born into or you were drawn to, all of a sudden there's other options. There's something else. There was a fluidity. And, some of the sort of more radical elements of society in the 1960s, look at the Beatles and what they got into in the 70s. It was all part of this sort of breaking apart of the consciousness out of a certain mold. And that's not always a pretty thing, and it's untidy and messy and chaotic and radical, but the consciousness is then free of some of those concepts. And now look at where we are 50 years on, 60, 70 years on now, where all of this is readily available. So it's an incredibly propitious time. The consciousness has actually increased in some respects. It's dropped in some respects, but increased in some respects. But that means that it's absolutely up to the individual to walk that path and do the work themselves. It's all there laid out for them, but they have to do it. Whereas organized religion, it's sort of organized for you and you follow along. Yes, you engage individually, certainly, but there's a sort of a structure around it. But spirituality in its essence, the quintessence of it, is not religious. It's come to mean that, and probably has traditionally always meant that, but that's not in essence. It's about this world of spirit, this world that is indescribable. It's mysterious, it's mystical, and we need to get comfortable with that. And our minds are not always comfortable with that. We like to have everything nailed down and known. And whilst that's useful, it's also limiting if that's all you've got. Because when you meditate or something and you fall still, you let go of all of that. And then you can enter something that is beyond the normal experience. And it is indescribable. You can add words to it, but they'll always be kind of descriptions that are, as it were, it's like this. You're often using metaphors and things because you can't describe it directly, because the words are much grosser than the actual consciousness, the energy itself. Does that help?
No, yes, it does. And, while you were talking, I was thinking, what is the opposite of being spiritual? my basic understanding is, spiritual, the opposite is material. But, like, what's your way of...
Yeah, spiritual and material works. Yeah, I quite like the material world and the spiritual world. That is as good as any other descriptor, I think, because the material world is just this 3D world, right? Three-dimensional world. Whereas the sort of 5-dimensional world, and that is more an expression that has come up more recently, is 4D and 5D. And 5D is this sort of quantum is another description that's come up now. And the quantum is this totality, this wholeness, this universality that is not limited to just 3D. And the mind, it's a magnificent instrument, but our conscious thinking mind has to think in opposites. It's the only way it can think. It's just how it's programmed. Up, down, hot, cold, day, night, good, bad, spiritual, material. It's our way of making sense. So whatever we pose, the mind will immediately present the opposite, because that's how it works. I'm hungry, I eat, I'm full, right? I'm tired, I sleep, I'm rested. Do you see what I mean? It's one then the other. And that's the nature of that mind. And that is useful at that point. If you want to go to the shops and you need to buy a bus ticket and go into the shops to buy your groceries, you're going to need that conscious mind to navigate that process on one level. But if that's the only aspect of thought that we use, then you're going to be caught in this world of duality. And it is very much at that 3D level, the world of the senses bringing in impressions, and then we have a sort of a binary approach to them. And any subtlety we think we think we have in our thought processes, unless it is beyond that, we can just be fooling ourselves that they're sophisticated, because they're not. They're just of that level of thinking. We need to actually fall still, let that go. That takes attention control, as you've discovered. And then there's other aspects of our thinking and consideration and reflection that bring about discernment. And discernment is a different function of the mind. And we can't get to discernment whilst we're in this 3D material world. I know that's a lot of things to think about there, but does that help?
No, yes, it does. Absolutely.
Okay. We're going to stop and take a break, and then let's pursue this after, or you can ask me some more questions. So we'll stop for a break now. Welcome back, everyone. Welcome back to Damayanti, the show for your soul. And we're just getting into the weeds now with our special guest, Saad Khan, and it's our World of Spirit Q&A. So, Saad, back to you. Do you want to keep going on that, or have you got other questions?
I do, but yeah, let's keep going on that first. Or would you rather hear
Yeah. So just, refresh my memory as to where do you want to pick up with this?
So we're talking about... well, sorry, I was actually just thinking about the question, so my mind's gone blank. So if you don't mind, I'll ask the question I've got. At the moment, the way I'm describing it is that when I was mentally sick and in the midst of addiction, the opposite of spiritual to me was, I had expectations in my life, and those expectations ruled my life, and that caused a lot of stuff going on up there. Like I need to have a good car, I need to have good clothes, I need to have the look. Whereas now I'm enjoying the journey. I do have an aim, but I'm not relying on any expectations. So would that be, another way to, talk about what being spiritual is and, the opposite?
Absolutely. Yeah, because you're in what you're describing, you can you can hear it in what you're saying. I can feel it, that there is something else beyond, because there's nothing wrong with the clothes in the car and all of that. But if that's all there is, Houston, we've got a problem. Whereas, but within you, blessedly, and that's the mystical element, something awoke in you, something woke up, something, you became aware. And again, you'll describe it in ways, but something in you has clearly awoken. You've become aware and you've done work. So there's something else beyond all of that that is more real, more potent, more present, more important. Am I on the right track with that?
Yes, absolutely.
So that's absolutely, and you're just, and then you use the word spiritual as opposed to material, and in its essence, it is spiritual, because it's that world of spirit, that inner spirit, your spirit, the essence of who you are. And that is indescribable because it's beyond words. So any words you use are unsatisfactory and will only ever be right for that moment in time, because the next moment you'll describe it some other way. So there's an infinite way of describing it. That's how I'm getting from what you say. And that is a fabulous way in for people, because that's accessible to them. But you, like it or not, and it's an important element, and I'll say it again, and you're meeting this, the word spiritual immediately triggers an image of religious. And if I can just, this is a sidebar, one of the reasons I do what I do with Sanskrit, and why Damayanti and the show and what I present, there's always an element of Sanskrit, because this is what I was taught, that my spiritual teachers said, we can't hear things because we've got these filters and these triggers. And back in the 70s and the 80s, people weren't so aware of it as they are now. They just weren't. And he said, so we can sit and have a discussion and we're not actually conversing with each other because we're filtering everything. So we're not actually communicating. So he went back to source wisdom, and he went back to Sanskrit, which is an original language and a pure language. And I've done plenty of shows on this, and there's blog pieces on my website, damayanti.store. Go there and you can read them. Why Sanskrit? But we would go back to the essential core meanings of what that word meant, just to sort of, in a sense, put our linguistic thought processes through the washing machine to clean it out of some of these filters. Because when you hold up what you think in relation to what, say, Sanskrit's meaning is, sometimes in the light of the universal wisdom of Sanskrit, it can show up these filters, right? And it really can, and in simple little words. And I've got an example of that I had quite a few years ago now. It's in my book, and I've talked about it, and I've done shows about it, so I won't talk about it, but it was in relation to the English word all, A-double-L. And I was looking it up in Sanskrit, which I've done many, many times. And I did it as a spiritual exercise. And I realized unconsciously, it's subconscious. And by definition, that means below our normal level of consciousness. When I heard the word all, I thought that meant a lot, right? I didn't consciously think that, but I was filtering out the word all to mean a lot, rather than all, like nothing left out. All means all. You know what I mean? So when Sanskrit uses the word all, it means all, everything, nothing left out. When I heard it, I was filtering. So that's just one mini example. It's one of the reasons Sanskrit made such an impact on me when I was younger, because I thought, wow, this is incredible on so many levels. So that's what we're meeting with spiritual and religious. these subconscious filters, and they are there, and they're not specific. They're specific to individuals because everyone will have their own way of triggering, but these are also in the collective consciousness as well. And in my view, they do need some purification. They need some cleansing. And the way to do it is the way we're going, is getting the awareness around this fact. Doing the work that you're doing, which is work on yourself to be able to talk about this. Because as you pursue this line of questioning and work that you're doing, you're actually opening this up for a lot of people, and people you'll never meet. You're opening it up for the collective consciousness.
Yeah, it definitely did. So, okay, my next question is, since I've started this spiritual journey, as you know, some of those, I'm not sure what you call it, the monkey on the shoulder, or the, monster within, or, what it is.
All those, yeah.
It sneaks its way back in, and
Yes.
or it tries to. And so, is there a way to measure or watch for these things? Because, once I said to my, spiritual teacher, who's not here anymore, but I said to him once, look, anger is wrong. I know anger is wrong. And he said, oh, no, it's not wrong. It's wrong if you're a slave to it. And I noticed it come up yesterday.
Yeah.
And it took me a while. So I was watching this video, and then a person in that video triggered, a little bit of annoyance and anger. And I caught myself in my head, and I moved away from experiencing this beautiful video. So I thought, hang on a minute, I'm not, I don't have attention on what I'm doing. I've been moved away from it. So is there a way to kind of, measure or have something in place that tells me, oh, hang on a minute, I think you're slipping back in, or, how do I measure it?
Well, I've got several responses to that. One, yes, there's nothing wrong with any of these emotions if you're not a slave to them. And that is the universal lesson, and all the wisdom traditions will teach that. These emotions in their pure form, there's nothing wrong with them. They ultimately won't be destructive of anything that is good and useful and uplifting. And sometimes anger is necessary in its right place. And it can be used with detachment and calmness, in fact, in its right place. But leaving that aside, because that's a different conversation, it's exactly what the measure is, exactly what you did, which is spotting in that moment when we do get taken off. That's a fact. That is our human work. That is the human condition. And that's why we keep practicing. We keep coming back again and again and again and again and again. That's what we do. And it's not always hard slog. It's just spotting in the moment. I've been taken off. And that's the wisdom traditions often describe that where we go to sleep, they often describe it as a ghost, because it's got this kind of energetic sort of apparition where and your attention's taken, and we're caught in our triggers and our anger and all of that. And all it is when you spot that you are, you've gone off, is come back. And the Shankara, one of the greatest teachers of mankind, he said, you never delve into the origins of ignorance. Just get back on and stay awake. Put your attention there rather than delving into the origins of your ignorance, because he said that way is madness. Yeah. That way madness lies, and it's backward looking. So all sufficient is, I'm asleep, come back. again and again and again, and let whatever it is that you got hooked up on, just let it go. And the more easily and more readily and more quickly and more lightly that you can do that again and again, sort of you get caught up, my fist, and then let it go. Mm-hmm. Let it go. You do that, and then all of a sudden you find yourself sometime later, you think, oh yeah, just not as distracted, because your attention has been on staying awake. All right. So measuring your level of sleep and so on just may not be that helpful in terms of the ultimate aim, which is to stay awake. And I'm using just the term wake and asleep as relative terms. Does that help? Because we've got to finish in a minute, but does that help?
Yeah, sure. No, it definitely does. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And so it's that fleet of footness, I think, is really something I've learned over the years. Anyway, we've come to the end of the show, and I really appreciate what you brought to the table, Sard. I'd love to do it again because you have such amazing questions. So thanks for joining us, and thank you everyone for joining the show today and listening in. And go to my website, damayanti.store, and I'll see you at the next show. Thank you for spending time with me on Damayanti, the show for your soul. To find out more about Damayanti, or to get my book, Conscious Confidence, Use the Wisdom of Sanskrit to Find Clarity and Success, or to purchase my range of beautiful spiritual jewelry, go to my website, damayanti.store. That's DAMAYANTI.store. Damayanti.store. See you next time.